podcast, Cinderella Chats. I'm your host, Cinderella Field. Yes, that's really my name, along with your co-host, Sandy Hunter. We are so excited to be here to share some insight about life, love, and relationships. So let's get to it. Hi, Sandy.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good for the most part. Feel a lot better than I have the last couple of weeks. Just feeling good.
Good.
Tired. I subbed this week 4 days in a row with first, second, and third graders. Yes, I am crazy. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
So was that a bunch of fun or what?
It was fun, but you go from there at 3:00 to my normal job starting at 3:30. Last night, I think I was at school at 7:15 and I got home about 8:40 last night. So I'm really tired. Yeah. But that's okay. It's worth it.
They need help. Work is never done.
That's exactly right. Well, I'm so super excited because I had a lot of great feedback from all of our listeners on our subject last week of change. And I just feel like we're just not done with that. So I really kind of wanted to talk some more this week about change. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you're not either because I'm reading some of the notes. And I said, so last week we opened the door to chat about the why and starting the podcast. And we focused on change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because change is constantly in motion.
Absolutely. And in today's time, I think it's, wow, especially after being with these littles all week long. A lot has changed since we've been in school. I will tell you that much. The days of loading down your backpack with textbooks are long gone. I didn't even see one book in a classroom other than just a downtime reading book, a very, very small, tiny library. Everything is on Chromebooks.
I know.
And I had to
How sad though.
Yes. I had to teach for 2 days. And I will tell you, those kids are changing every 15 to 20 minutes. They'll just get started on a subject. Some of them, especially the ones that are a little bit slower in learning and moving. I could tell the younger ones in the class because they weren't quite so up to speed, but they might get halfway through their worksheet and we're on to the next thing. And then they have to go back during downtime, which may be 5 minutes there or 10 minutes there, pull out the worksheet and try to finish. It was just the craziest thing I've ever seen. The change in writing and grammar and the way they do things. There's absolutely no cursive writing whatsoever. It's all just print, just single letters. And I started out on the board and I wrote my name in cursive and they all looked at me like I was just some alien because they were like, well, what does that say, teacher? And I'm like, well, that says Miss Hunter. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to erase it and just write block letters, HUNTER. And they were like, oh. And then you have the ones that are in GT, which is gifted and talented, came up to my desk and they said, now, why was your name written like that? I said, well, in our time, it was called cursive writing. We learned how to print and we learned how to write in cursive. But there have been so much change because they do everything on tablets. Everything is electronic. There's no need for cursive writing, which I always thought was so eloquent. You know, if you read some of the letters back in the 17 and 1800s, it's almost like everybody wrote in calligraphy. I mean, the writing was just so beautiful. Now we just have letters. I don't know why I got on that tangent, but that's a little change there for you in the elementary school.
That's a lot of change.
Yes, it is.
And I mean, but, you know, when I think about it, you know how much I love technology.
Yes.
Not, right?
Right.
I don't like it. And I mean, if I could, I wouldn't be podcasting. I would be writing instead.
Right.
But people don't want to read anymore. And so Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So I never thought that I would be doing anything like this, to be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely. And some people just don't want to change, Cinderella, And I'll use my mom as an example. I bought my mom a Kindle to where she can get all these free books on here because she loves to read. And she's flat dug her heels in. It's been collecting dust, I found out, for about a year and a half now up on her bookshelf because she has to have something tangible in her hand. It's the whole process of flipping the page, of going back and rereading. And I got her to the Kindle thinking, well, she can just scroll or she can hit the audio button and it'll read it for her. She just flat out said, no, that's too lazy. Why would I do that? Put it up on the shelf. She's not a person of change.
Well,
Who would ever thought?
well, I'm not so sure all this change has been a good thing. Well, I know it hasn't been a good thing because, I mean, my daughter is involved with Chromebooks every day. I mean, that's what she takes care of at Bixby for all those students. And I see it with, my grandchildren and, they've got one of those things to look at all the time. That's not a good thing. I mean, just like adults have their iPhones to look at. I mean, you can go through a restaurant, between the hours of 6:30 to 9:00, and people that have been married for a long time that you see wedding rings on their hands, or people that are just having probably they're dating or whatever. It's usually the guy that has the phone out most of the time. Because women still, I think, like to talk, but they've gotten to the point that it's very hard for them to have, human to human relationships.
Right. And we're teaching that to the littles.
Well, yes. And so, I mean, what is going to happen to everything? I mean, that's, when 2020 happened and the pandemic and everything, then everybody got used to being by themselves and locked up. And so they had no other way to communicate but via,
right,
the phone, text messaging, and, videos and, just the things on the internet. And that's when the podcast started picking up and, really moving forward very quickly. But I don't think this is all good. Remember that we talked about one of the things that I had in my book. If he texts you out for a date, no need to respond. This guy's no communicator, so just move on.
Right.
I mean, that was written
listen,
eons ago.
My high schooler will text me from her bedroom and say, Mimi, will you bring me this? Or Mimi, will you bring me that? Or Mimi, tomorrow will you do this? Or tomorrow will you do that? And I would yell from my bedroom, child, get up out of your bed and come tell me what you want. I can't. They're so used to communicating now with technology. And I understand. I mean, I'm all about moving forward and growing and all this kind of thing. But
even if it's at the detriment of society, because it's ruined our families.
Well,
to be honest
I think
with
in
you.
certain areas, change has been good.
Like what?
Just the way that we purify our waters, the way that the things that we have created to help conservations, with animals and things. I think there are things that have happened that change has been good. But like you said, I think there are things that have happened that technology has really rooted itself right up in the middle of things. Now, there were teachers. I was so impressed because there was one teacher that said yesterday, basically had said, now 1 out of 4 different teachers said, hey, I only want my kids on their Chromebooks 15 minutes out of every 2 or 3 hours. I was shocked, but she's also the teacher that had stacks and stacks of sheets of work to do by hand, not just something they pulled up on the Chromebook and just touched the answers. but something that she really wanted them to sit down and write the sentences and figure the math problems out on a sheet. She wanted them to prove their work. So I was like, okay, so we still have those out there that are about change that are putting restrictions maybe on certain things, which I think is great. I don't think there's anything with a mom saying, okay, you can be on your PlayStation today for 20 minutes. And then that's it. Get your chores done. After your homework, after everything's done, you can play for 20 minutes on this and that's it. Then you go read a book or you go find something else to do. I don't think those things should be used as babysitters. Those little iPads, I see little bitty kids carrying those things around.
But you know what change started out before that was so much TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How many children do you see playing outside today?
Oh, hardly any.
You don't see people outside very often, do you? Except for when they're walking or things like that.
Right.
And you don't see a lot of them, but you don't see children playing anymore.
No.
So what I think technology, this is just my opinion and the way that I see it,
Sure.
has rerouted society and human beings.
Right.
And really, rerouted relationships. I mean, people don't know how to have relationships anymore.
Well, you can even go as far as saying it has rerouted people to an unhealthy lifestyle because people that used to get out and move around and walk now sit down and will spend, 4 or 5 hours every night on technology instead of moving.
Social media.
You have doctors that are saying that younger 20s, 30s, and 40-year-old people the cancer is increased in these age groups, that autoimmune diseases have increased in these age groups.
But why do you think
one doctor said it's because they're just not going out and getting their hands dirty. They are not exercising like they should. They're not eating the things that they should. They're not doing the things that a normal human being did.
Or that
30
God,
or 40 years ago.
Well, or that God created them to need.
Absolutely.
I mean, the reason that you go outside and, out in the sunshine and fresh air and all of those things, I mean, the sun provides vitamin D for us. Well, everyone that I know, with the exception of myself, but I did at one time, had lower vitamin D levels. I don't anymore because I know exactly what to do for that. But that's what I'm saying. This is not a good thing. That's why I don't care. I really don't care because I'm not a liberal. I don't care about, I don't think the water is any better than what it used to be unless we put filtration systems in place. Like not every family has the money to do that kind of stuff. But I mean, our oceans are not in a good place. Supposedly all this stuff is going on. Well, I mean, really and truly, I mean, the world is changing so quickly right before us. But my main concern is people. My main concern is what God really wanted for us as people. And I don't think that God wanted this kind of stuff for us. I'm sorry.
I don't necessarily think so either. But then again, you look at evolution, you look at one point in time, we were in horse and buggies, then we went to cars, and now we're doing hover cars, which I read about the other day, what just shocked me, that cars that are supposed to be coming out in 2030, they've got prototypes right now that they raise in the air and can fly over traffic and land, and they're going to start out about $200,000 or $300,000. Okay, I just couldn't. I mean, this is the Jetson stuff. I just couldn't get my head around it, and I thought, okay. Well, then I thought, okay, Sandy, I'm very vintage. I'm very old school. I love having the morals. I love everything about God's word. I've literally had to tell my husband the other day, I said, we have to slow down. I really want our family to just put on the brakes a little bit and slow down. I want to slow down with Christmas, get back to the true meaning of that, with it being about Christ and just appreciating the fact that we have our family around, not how many presents the dollar can buy. I want to slow down with Thanksgiving and be thankful for each and every person that's still in my life and just sit down and share a good meal with our family. There are just so many things that change has brought upon us. And we can do one or two things. I read something about change. This says seasons of change are not always easy, but when you learn to embrace these seasons, they can be responsible for tremendous growth. And I do believe that. I do believe when seasons change, we learn from things, but we have control of our own world. I mean, our own worlds and what we put in our family unit. And that goes back to what you said. So many things have changed in this world that it's affected the family unit. That even though everybody's under the same roof, they're not in the same cell. Does that make sense?
Well, not everybody is under the same roof anymore because, I mean, divorce is at a higher rate. People are just living
Mhm.
with each other. They're not getting married anymore because
Mhm.
they don't think that they have to. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, I talked to someone this morning that had told me that somebody close to me had gotten married, which indeed she had not gotten
Mhm.
married. They just said their vows to each other. And because she had talked to so many pastors that they told her, of course, that's okay. You don't really have to go and get married anymore before anyone or sign any sort of,
Mhm.
you know, involve legality because I mean, God accepts everything. That's not true. I'm sorry. I don't believe that.
I don't
I'm
either.
not sorry, actually, that I don't believe that. And that's why I say on some of the videos or some of the things that I've said, is the Bible real or not? And you know what I'm thankful for right now is that the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson,
Oh, he's just absolutely wonderful. He has
I love
proven
him.
his godliness right on air.
Yes, he does. And not just that, but they were talking about him and his wife in some article
Mhm.
about, oh, can you believe they have a covenant marriage? And I thought, well, I thought everyone had a covenant marriage. What does this mean? And as I read it further, and they were making fun of them, basically, seriously, in the
Well,
article that I read. And so, I mean, it just went on to say,
well, Christ told us in the Bible that they'll mock us in his name.
to what?
Christ said in the Bible that we will be tortured and mocked in his name for believing in him. So
Oh, I
that's
know,
just
and
one
keeping
thing.
his word. But she was so excited. And at the end of the article, she said, I was so excited that he wanted a covenant marriage. And there are 3 states within the United States that has it where you can do that. Okay. And that is Louisiana, Arkansas, and I believe Missouri. And that means that you can't get a divorce for no reason, like, no fault divorce.
Right.
Okay. Well, so that kind of goes back to the Bible and covenant with God
Mhm.
and the covenant that couples have with Him when they get married.
Well, and that's just one more example of change, how things have changed. That's not
That's why in my opinion, that's why the family has been destroyed.
absolutely.
Because do you know how many women I work with that are divorced and and they're in their mid 50s and
Yeah.
older? And do you know what that's created? They're not sitting down for Thanksgiving and saying,
No,
I am so thankful for my
that's
family. They
exactly
don't
what I
have their
mean.
family there.
Absolutely. And I totally that I think that's exactly what's happening. And unfortunately, it's going to come down to an individual responsibility and choices. It's choices that were made. And unfortunately, to every choice, there's a consequence. So, choices that somebody in a covenant marriage makes will dictate how the family ends up. That's how come I firmly believe that there should be more restrictions on people who want to get married. I think
What
I
about who
think
want to get a divorce after they get married?
not we all know about the whole divorce part, but if you can head it off right at the front, then you don't have to worry about the back, hopefully. You know what I mean? If you make things stricter on the front end of it, whether that be strenuous counseling, whether that be, all these certain things that they have to meet this certain criteria, great. You know what I mean? I just think it would make those covenants mean more. Not just like the one kid told me, and I will forever in my life use that example. Well, I just can't wait to get my first divorce over with so I can find the true love of my life.
Yeah, but 50 years ago, we didn't have pornography that was in everyone's hand.
But how do you change that now, Cinderella?
I don't know, but you hold people accountable. You don't go, oh, that's just technology.
And guess what?
This is where we are. We're moving and changing and it's all good.
Yeah,
because
it's never,
not.
but it's never going to go away. So you can't I wish there was one answer, and maybe God will give that to me when I get to heaven. I have so many questions, but I wish there was just one answer for the family unit, but there's not, because it's all on an individual basis, because people were given free will and they can listen and do whatever they want. And the sad thing is, usually church and state, people thought more about the church than they ever did the state.
Well, the church and state did things together. Politics and church went hand in hand when this all started, and now it doesn't.
Well, that's the difference. The Declaration of Independence was to protect us, the church, from state. I mean, it was to separate the two institutions. That's why we came over here and got away from Britain. It was to protect both institutions from each other, to separate them. And the church was looked at more back in the day. I mean, people, I don't know if there was a more well-found respect for those that went to church. I don't know exactly what it was, but people were just thought more highly of, and they would just never dream of upsetting those covenants. Well, now you could go through practically an Arby's and get a divorce. They might as well just set up a drive-through divorce sitting out in the middle of the parking lot somewhere, because that's basically what it's come down to. You don't like her. You don't like how she ties her shoes, and I don't like how he brushes his teeth. So guess what? We've been married. Who cares that we made a covenant marriage under God? We're just going to go get a divorce because we have, what do you call it? Irreconcilable differences? Really?
No fault divorce.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But I don't think we can ever get away from that. I don't think we ever can, because the Bible tells us in the last days what's going to come. The Bible doesn't lie. It didn't say, oh, it's all going to get better in the end. It says it's all just going to get so much worse. So how do we combat that? Well, we do it by, things are changing. They are. But I hope the things that we talk about really makes people think about, hey, I've been feeling this way. I've been thinking this way. Maybe I need to go talk to someone before I just dive off and go get a divorce from somebody.
Well, I think things can change because, we've been living in end times for a long time. Since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know that that's really where we're headed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what God has in store for us. So if we just sit back and say, well, we can't change anything, so we might as well just give up.
No, you don't give up. You keep talking, you keep spreading the word, you keep setting examples. You do. But a person can't put the weight of the world on their shoulders and think that if I don't do these things, the whole world's going to just implode. The world is imploding now as we speak.
Certainly the worst that we've ever seen it.
Yes, the worst that we've ever seen it.
Yes.
But the question is, what can we do to help those marriages and things that are already in place and the ones to come? We can't do anything about the divorces that have already happened. It is what it is. You really can't do anything. But just like the old saying is, okay, you have 1 million starfish on the beach and you're trying to throw them all back in, and you realize that I can't get them all back in. But guess what? The one you do throw in, you've made a difference in that person's life. That's how I feel like it is. That's where we battle. That's where we save. Because if we just save one or help one, I think that's all he expects out of us, to do exactly what we possibly can. I don't think there's a real solution that's going to fix it all at once. The small steps, like you said, with the change for the reform of the divorce in Oklahoma, going from making it no fault state to a fault state.
Well, it's still a fault state. The attorneys just choose
Well,
not to. It really
right.
is.
Yeah, I know it, but the judges and them have gotten so
Well,
slack.
the attorneys will tell you that they don't care. So this is what we're going to use. I know because I went through a divorce.
Right.
And I mean, I've researched all of this stuff to nauseam, but it is what has created the problem in the family unit. And now everybody just says, well, let's just do whatever. And I mean, whatever with everything. And that's why I say, is the Bible really real? Should we even, consider the word of God anymore? Because how many versions of the Bible are there?
Well, the Bible's real. I mean, and I know what your belief is. And yes, the Bible's real, but you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
But that's with anything. I'm not just talking about divorce specifically. I'm talking about the fact that we have no morals. I mean, just like I said, with all Facebook, you look on Facebook and I mean, some of it looks like soft porn. I mean,
it's
come
awful.
on. And so you hear people say words that weren't even allowed on TV.
Girl, my mom,
10 years ago.
My mom could tell you things today. We were just talking about it when she was getting her chemo treatment today. We were sitting there talking about it. I can remember a time that I just stomped my foot and said, "Oh, mother." I was angry. "Oh, mother," and walked away. I sat on the tub with a bar of ivory soap in my mouth for God only knows how long. I could have took out stock in Dawn dishwashing liquid as much as I probably drank in my childhood. We could not say buttocks. We could not say words that I heard all kinds of words flying around the last 4 days. And I was just appalled. Twice I asked two little 7 and 8-year-olds, "Do your parents let you talk like that at home?" And you know the response of, "No, I get in trouble." Well, then why are you doing it at school? Because guess what? They don't get in trouble at school anymore.
I know a 6-year-old child that said, "Well, my parents let me do that at home."
Yes.
And then guess what? Their parents got an email from the teacher.
Right.
And those parents were livid. So, I mean, children will say anything these days too to keep themselves out of trouble. I mean, that's just human nature, I think. But back to Speaker Mike Johnson. So I thought it was just a wonderful story about them and how they became one with one another and how much he respects her and loves her and how much she respects him and loves him, even despite their differences. And they admit that they have differences. And not just that, but I mean, one of the first photos of him right there was on the floor of Congress praying on his knees.
In a circle. I've seen that.
Okay. Yeah. With a bunch of men around him. So it just, I mean,
That's the hope.
Maybe. But then when I see everything that's going on and what's been accepted, I mean, this is the deal. This is what Andrew Forrest said when I was at church last Sunday. People aren't going to he's doing a Bible study next Wednesday, and I'm not even going to talk about what it's about because, I mean, this all goes back to the change that I went through. I guess this is where we were headed, maybe, and what, I believe God has given me to talk about. And sometimes I think, I mean, even today, just sitting here, just thinking about all of this stuff. Why am I even doing this if it's not going to do any good? I mean, it's just really sad. And what do my children have to look forward to? A divorce and their families being busted apart? Speaker Mike Johnson, and just reading some things about he and his wife and his family, and they had an adopted child as well. And what they do gives me hope that maybe someone can help turn this around. But this is where I was going. So this is what he said last Sunday, because what he's going to talk about is he's been doing a Bible study for the whole church on the book of Matthew. And so now it's, chapter 16, 17, 18, and 19. And he said, people aren't going to like what I'm going to have to say, but it's not me saying it, it's the Bible.
Right.
And society, because the culture and society is not okay with it. They don't like it. So he always starts his sermons with those who have ears to hear, let them hear. That's a parable. That's what Jesus said. Those who have ears, let them hear. Okay.
Right.
And even the people that were with Jesus didn't listen to him.
Because we're human.
They were there. They heard it. It went
With
in
their
one
own
ear and
ears.
out the other. Okay. And so he said, people aren't going to like what I'm going to say, just like the Pharisees in chapter 19, when they approached Jesus about divorce. And they didn't like what he said. And Jesus was hated. People hated Jesus because of what he said.
They hated him for a lot of reasons.
Yes, for a lot of reasons. Because he came here to tell the truth. That's what he was here for. So, I mean, this pastor says, you're not going to like what I have to say about what's coming up, the Bible study, the final conclusion of the Bible study next Wednesday. And we're going to talk about sex too. And you're not going to like what I'm going to say about that either, of what the Bible says. Because people shouldn't be having sex outside of marriage. Did you know that?
Well, yeah. And most Christians do know that.
Yeah, but they do it anyway, don't they?
Depends on who you are. Not all of them do. I'm not going to sit here and say that, yeah, all of them are and all of them are thinking incorrectly, but there's too much of it going on.
Well, would you say it goes on more often than not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I would too, because I mean, I know for a fact it does. And there are so many forms of sex now, aren't there? It doesn't just have to be,
Can you describe that for me? Is that what Clinton said? Can you define that for me, please?
Well, okay. You know what? I didn't even think about this, but maybe he started that whole nonsense.
Probably very well.
He put it in motion when he said that, didn't he? And it has just, people won't just settle with one form of that.
You're exactly
something
right.
other. So they've created all this
Absolutely.
other.
I totally agree. Cinderella, I do. It's crazy. And I just really wish I had the answer for all of it. But I think we need to keep on the subject of change, because there's just so many other avenues in the family with different dynamics in the family that we need to talk about with change, outside the family, with church. Things that have changed.
Church has changed so much.
Oh my goodness. Things that have changed within the church, things that have changed within our workplaces, our homes. I mean, there's just so many things, but there's this I came across this. It's called Seasons of Change. Now, this is what I really like this one. It says, remember, every season is not a growing season. Every season is not a harvest. There are seasons of watering, seasons of planting, seasons of pulling up weeds and fertilizing the ground. There are more important seasons. They are times of testing where God is seeing what we're made of. Are you going to keep a good attitude when you're not making progress? Are you going to do the right thing when you're not seeing growth? Have faith and patience. And that's hard, because I've been in every one of those things when I'm not making progress and when I'm not seeing growth. Where's my attitude?
Well, you know what? I mean, I go back to what, when the whole process of me not being married anymore, and God saying, when I sat in my chair, be still and know I'm God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Be still and know I'm God. Yeah. Really. 4610, go somewhere and bye-bye. I mean, I would just like to crumble you up and throw you away. And the fastest running river there is, because be still and know I'm God.
Yeah.
Really?
Have faith and patience. Let's talk about
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But who has faith anymore? Because they want something.
Where are they here now?
Now.
Nation? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where is
now.
it? Yeah. I want it right now. I mean, you didn't answer my text. What's wrong with you?
Do you know how many times I've said that to people probably in the last 2 months? Not in your timing and God's timing. Not in your timing and God's timing. Our timing and God's timing are two totally different things.
Okay. Well, that is even something else that we can talk about, because if you don't wait for his timing, look what you do to it's a domino effect. What happens?
We just talked about this, Abraham and Sarah. And Hagar, you look at Hagar, her whole lineage goes all the way down to the Islam. You look at Abraham and Sarah's lineage, goes all the way down to Christ. You can just backtrack and see where all the craziness has come from. It's that simple.
Yes, but it goes back to choices.
Choices. What did I say? Every morning you get up, you make a choice whether you want to get out of bed. And from that moment on, you're choosing all day long. And there is a consequence to everything. This world did not go from the 1950s June and Ward Cleaver world to where we are now by no effect. It's all been choices between our governments, between the way the people look at things from the entertainment world, all of these things. And you know who's behind it? And he's laughing at us. That's the funny part.
Well, I think he likes it when he hears that we can't do anything about it.
He knows.
I mean,
Cinderella, he knows the back of the book more than we do. He knows what's coming for him.
Because you know what? I remember this. A journey begins with one single step.
Mm-hmm.
We might not be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube, but I certainly think that probably can be done if you have some patience. And it depends on where the toothpaste is.
Depends on what kind of toothpaste.
Well, and it depends on what the tube is like.
And what it's made of.
Right. So, I mean, that's not true. You could cut it in half.
Absolutely.
You could put the tooth back. I just thought about this. You darn sure can.
But you will lose
toothpaste.
Some. Inevitably.
Well, sometimes you need to lose some things.
Well, sometimes things
that might be a message in itself.
Things need to be pruned away sometimes. So.
Right. But I mean, you could cut it in half or cut it at the bottom and then put it back in there with a little, I don't know, a popsicle stick or whatever you need to scoop it up.
Right.
And then you know what you do? You tape that puppy up and start squeezing it and using it and cleaning things up again.
Life is about change and the ability to adapt to those changes. This is what I like. Do not fear the changing seasons. Taste the fruit, drink the drink of each, whether bitter or sweet, because this too shall pass. It will all pass away. We sing about it. It will pass away. And there's nothing right now. My goal, and I think your goal, is to make the family unit stronger, to forego divorce, to do things that are Christ-like.
Well, to sit down at the table and have dinner again. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
What we did with our children. And people are on the move to, I mean, just like, my daughter and my son-in-law having all of us over to carve pumpkins. We did a family activity together. We were all together.
Sure.
My grandchildren will remember their Grammy being there.
Absolutely.
And
you know how important that is to them?
Yes, I do.
Important that is going to be when they get 20 and 30 and 40 years old and you're no longer here.
Well, that's how you create memories that are passed down.
Sure.
Generation after generation. So we have to be careful what we're passing down, because just like Dr. Tony Evans said, a generational curse thing is real.
Sure it is.
And that's what it says in the Bible. But I don't know. Maybe I should quit reading the Bible, believing the Bible, because
you guys know she's joking, correct? She is joking. She's being facetious. She knows it's as a Christian. And when you are in a media spot, like Cinderella is with Cinderella Chats, and me being just a host with her.
Not just a host.
Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have all this heavy burden for so many people because she's been through so many things. I've been through my own choice of things. And you just don't want to see people go down that path. You don't want other people's children to suffer like your children have suffered. You don't want people to have to go through the hardships that you've had to go through this time. And you just feel such a responsibility to shake people and say, hey, wake up, because you could be right where I'm sitting in a blink of an eye.
Well, you know what? The family that I grew up in, it was pretty tragic.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty chaotic. But you know what? I overcame a bunch of stuff. You know how I did that? Choices. It doesn't mean that I didn't make some bad decisions, but I didn't like ugly too much. And I had, people in my life that introduced me to God from the time that I was a child. And God always got a hold of me and got me on track again somehow.
Right.
And that's what I pray and hope for all the time, that we can make a difference in just one person's life, because the journey really does of undoing what has been done, because it's so bad, does begin with a simple step toward that journey.
Absolutely.
You can't just give up and say, oh, it just can't be done. It just can't be done.
No.
Because until I take my last breath, I'm not going to believe that.
Well, just like a Christian, you just don't get to say, okay, I'm done working for Christ. You don't. You don't get to say, okay, well, I've been a pastor for 20 years, or I've done this, or I've done that, and I've done my duties for Christ. You don't get to say that. You go to your grave. Your very last breath should be spent on somebody by saying, God loves you. Do you know how much God loves you? Whether it's the nurse that's taking care of you while it's happening. Our work here is never done.
That's right. And that's another thing that he talked about, is because he said he thinks this whole future for Asbury is with the people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s. He says, because if you're still living and breathing, God has got a plan and purpose for your life.
Thank you.
And that is what he has been talking about for the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. And I think he's right on track, because I believe with everything in me the same thing. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a reason for being here. We have a great commission. We know. And if you don't know, you should know. He's the reason.
But you know what? So many older people, they were taught to keep their, don't cause any problems, don't make any waves. And that's what, he says as well. You can't just sit back and not say anything. Right. You have to speak up.
Right.
So we could go on and on about this today, but we'll leave it where it is about change, because change is in constant motion.
Absolutely.
And here's some food for thought. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Is that true? Is it? Until next Tuesday, we'll find out, won't we?
Yes, we will.
That's why it's life, love, and relationships. If you enjoyed the show today, share it with your friends so they can listen in to our conversations about life, love, and relationships. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Cinderella Chats, the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. We look forward to our Tuesdays together and know you will too.